again, everyone, and welcome to the Silver Bullets podcast. I am Michael Citro.
I'm Chip Minnich.
Chip, we are in our off season, but that does not mean that the news ever stops for Ohio State football. It's good to have you alongside me as we discuss it, although technically you're not beside me since we're in completely different states. How are you doing this week?
Cold. I'm very cold. It's that polar vortex is gripping this part of Ohio, and as I speak, it's probably below 20 degrees as we're recording this.
Yesterday we had a solar vortex here.
Yeah, we're far from that. Very far from that.
All right, well, let's dive right into the news and get to this week's agenda. Chip, the main thing that we have to talk about this week is the Ohio State coaching staff. We had mentioned that Greg Madison had retired, co-defensive coordinator retired, and that kind of, it wasn't shocking, but it was something that kind of, it was one of those things that could have happened any year, and then all of a sudden it happened this year. So he retires, and Ryan Day has made some decisions regarding what to do with the staff, and Kerry Combs will be the sole defensive coordinator for Ohio State this year. Matt Barnes has been elevated to the secondary coach position, and another sort of promotion from within. Parker Fleming has been elevated to special teams coordinator. What do you make of this shakeup? Do you think it's a good one? Do you think that maybe Ryan should have gone out and looked elsewhere? What are your overall thoughts on what Ohio State's coaching staff has undergone this offseason?
Well, I'm gonna take a mulligan on Parker Fleming simply because, to be fair, that when it came to his promotion, I think that this is, it's obviously a good move in the sense that promoting from within. I saw a tweet by former Ohio State linebacker Joshua Perry saying that this was a good move, that Parker Fleming is deserving of this promotion. I think we'll kind of, I'm going to withhold judgment. You asked about going outside of the program. I thought that kind of was going to be the decision, but now that after a few days to kind of reflect on it, I realized that, in a lot of ways, like it was kind of with Kerry Combs being given the sole defensive coordinator and Matt Barnes being promoted to the secondary coach, that in a way it speaks volumes of Ryan Day's confidence in Kerry Combs and Matt Barnes. I think that Kerry Combs has been kind of, if you wanted to give him a letter grade for last year, that Ryan Day is probably grading him as an incomplete. And I know that's not going to be satisfactory to a lot of Ohio State fans, the way that, like that lasting image that we all have of Ohio State, it was not a positive one. But as I reflect on this past year, keep in mind, it's one of these things where a year ago, Ohio State fans were ecstatic that Kerry Combs was coming back. And after everything that happened this past year, now he's fallen out of favor with Ohio State fans. I just think when you think about the fact that he was hired late after the NFL playoffs, came in, didn't have a true spring. Let's be honest. They had two practices. Everything that happened with the start, the stop, with everything with the coronavirus that impacted Ohio State. I just think he truly was an incomplete. So I think Ryan Day is showing a tremendous amount of confidence, a tremendous amount of faith in Kerry Combs and his ability to get the situation turned around. I also believe that in the event that the situation isn't cleared up, that I don't think Ryan Day will hesitate to make changes necessary, but I'm truly hoping that Kerry Combs is going to validate Coach Day's confidence and faith in him.
Yeah, and I think Ryan Day has had discussions with Kerry Combs about what will make him more comfortable, what will make put him in a better position to be successful in his second year. One of those is absolutely having a more normal spring ball to work with his defense. Part of that is taking some of those responsibilities in the secondary away and giving them to Matt Barnes. And, Kerry Combs now has been through a season as a defensive coordinator now, and he'll learn from that. This is a coach who has always learned throughout his career and has always, he's always strived to get better. So I anticipate improvements. We certainly saw some issues last year, and some of that was personnel, not having the personnel to run maybe the scheme they wanted to, having to run, something that they didn't want to run necessarily, maybe not having the horses to make adjustments that they wanted to make. Kerry Combs certainly learned some lessons this year, and as I said, some of those split responsibilities are now off of his plate, so he can concentrate on some other things. So I think that Ryan Day has taken a very cerebral approach to this, which is not surprising because that's the approach he takes to everything, and has figured, well, this is an opportunity to put Kerry Combs in the best position possible, and then if things don't get better, then you start considering what you need to do, what changes you need to make.
Precisely. And as it relates to Kerry Combs, and this is again just my opinion. I mean, I haven't seen anything or read anything online to kind of make me believe that this is going to be the case. But I certainly believe that Kerry Combs is the kind of individual who, his experience is in coaching the secondary. Let's face it. I mean, like that, it was kind of, that was what he did when he was with the Tennessee Titans. And obviously Matt Barnes also has experience. I think it's going to be a collaborative approach. And what I mean by that is, let's face it, when you have Larry Johnson, who is arguably the best defensive line coach in college football, you're covered there. Al Washington, and I know we're going to talk about Al Washington here in a little bit, at the linebackers has proven himself with the linebacker play and the recruiting. I think Al Washington, I think you're set there. I think it's going to be a collaborative approach with regard to listening to Larry Johnson, Al Washington, Matt Barnes. I mean, just kind of one of the things that I looked into, and this is something my father used to say to me all the time when it came to coaching moves, not necessarily about Ohio State, but just in general, is that my dad used to always say that, coaching is like a big fraternity in the sense that, like, if these guys have coached or worked with each other, that kind of familiarity of knowing each other, what their philosophies are, what, how they work together, that's something that as I was reflecting on Matt Barnes, and I'm not suggesting that this is the case, as it relates to Matt Barnes coaching the secondary, one of his previous coaching stops as he was, I guess, rising up the coaching ranks, he was a graduate assistant under Dan Quinn when Dan Quinn was the defensive coordinator of the responsibilities at Florida. And the reason why I bring up Dan Quinn's name is that Dan Quinn is one of those proteges of Pete Carroll, like with the single high safety look that Ryan Day favors. So my point being that I think obviously Kerry Combs has a comfort level in coaching the secondary a certain way. I also know that Matt Barnes certainly has his philosophies. I think you're going to see a healthy meld and a healthy collaborative style and approach to the defensive staff this offseason.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this season, seeing how the secondary, progresses. I think with another year under his belt, Sevyn Banks will be better. Cam Brown hopefully will be able to return to the field at full speed, by the fall. You got Lathan Ransom, who's come a long way, and I expect big things out of. So I think that we'll see some improvement out of that secondary. The linebackers, that's going to be a work in progress as they work to replace a whole lot of departing players. And speaking of the linebackers, Chip, big story that Josh Heupel would like to hire Al Washington as his defensive coordinator at Tennessee, and this is a little bit of a mixed thing for Al Washington. Obviously, if you want to be a defensive coordinator, it's tough to turn down that position if it's offered. And but the other side of that is that he's from Columbus. He's kind of comfortable where he's at, and he could end up becoming a co-defensive coordinator at Ohio State if he stays, and potentially even a defensive coordinator down the line. But the other thing about Tennessee is you're a little bit handcuffed if Tennessee has scholarship reductions and that kind of thing, because they're going to get some sanctions. So it might not be the best time for Al Washington to take a defensive coordinator position there.
I think I think you hit it right on the head, Michael, that the timing is just dreadful because Tennessee, you're absolutely correct. I mean, the opportunity to be the defensive coordinator at Tennessee, one of the, you're talking within the SEC, an opportunity to kind of elevate your name, your coaching status by being that defensive coordinator. However, Tennessee has been, in terms of the revolving door of coaches, because it's been like this ever since Tennessee pushed Phil Fulmer out. Lane Kiffin was there a year. And then it's just been, as I said a moment ago, just a revolving door of coaches. You hit on the fact that there are probably going to be NCAA violations that are going to result in scholarship reductions. So, as you said, Al Washington has, he has to really weigh when we talk about the pros and cons. Yes, this could be a rise in coaching stature, but what does it mean if you're hitching your wagon, so to speak, to somebody who might be out of a job within 2 to 3 years? I think Josh Heupel was a solid choice, but probably to the coaching fans down in Tennessee, probably underwhelming at best. And who's to say, as when it comes to recruiting, if he'll be able to compete, with the big boys in the SEC. The rumors, and again, they're purely rumors, is that Ohio State is going to make it financially worthwhile for Al Washington to stay. Whether or not that will be the deciding factor, you mentioned the fact maybe that co-defensive coordinator title to try and sweeten the pot to keep Al Washington here, because that would be a substantial loss for the coaching staff. I think with Greg Madison, I think his retirement was expected, which is why these promotions from within made sense. But to lose Al Washington, especially as Ohio State is just beginning winter workouts before spring football officially begins, I think that would be very substantial for Ryan Day to overcome going into year 3 of his program.
Well, Chip, I can save Ohio State a lot of money. All the Buckeyes need to do really is to have Clay Travis tweet out something irresponsible and stupid about Al Washington, and the Tennessee fans will do the rest. We've seen this before.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah. It's just one of these things where as soon as the news broke that Tennessee was moving on from Jeremy Pruitt and they were forcing Phil Fulmer out of the athletic director position, it seemed as though that the powers that be recognized, hey, the last time we did this, we let the fans have way too much sway and power over our decision making. And they went out, hired their athletic director, and then he went out and hired Josh Heupel. But yeah, I certainly would only hope that Clay Travis says something foolish that the fans will grab a hold of, and maybe that will make Al Washington reconsider if he's strongly considering, that is.
Yeah, we can guarantee that Clay Travis will tweet something foolish and irresponsible. We just can't guarantee that it'll be about Al Washington.
Yeah, and like I said, like I said, the rumors that I've read, and I want to emphasize that they're rumors, is that from what I've read online, and I don't want to say that these are definitive, but that Al Washington was supposedly meeting with Gene Smith, with Ryan Day, that there are possibilities of, like you said, maybe a change in title, a bump in salary, to try and persuade him, as you said. And I think that when you said it, I think it is not to be understated. I think the fact that Al Washington is a Columbus native. His father played for Ohio State. And let's face it, Al Washington was considered an up-and-coming coach when he was coaching up at Michigan. And the fact that he left, Ohio, he left Michigan to go to, arguably the Wolverines, biggest rival. The fact that this was kind of I don't want to say his dream job, but something that he eagerly accepted. And I just think Al Washington, I'm going to hold out hope that he's going to still be Ohio State's linebacker coach, certainly for the foreseeable future.
Well, we'll see. We'll watch this, and of course, we record this on Monday night, so we're recording this on the 8th of February, and by the time the post hits Buckeye Scoop on Wednesday in its regularly scheduled time, maybe this will already be resolved, but this will, the folks who have subscribed and get the Silver Bullets podcast directly into their podcast feed will have already heard it, so at least it won't be too late for them. Let us turn our attention, Chip, to the 2021 Big Ten schedule. It was, of course, revised this week, and Ohio State now knows its slate for the 2021 season. And this will begin on September 2nd at Minnesota. That's a Thursday night, Chip. How do you feel about a Thursday night opening game?
I like it simply because I'll be honest. I'm gonna be the type that I'll probably take that Friday off, give myself a long Labor Day weekend. The fact that it's at Minnesota, I mean, it's a program that had a disappointing 2020 season. I think the Big Ten probably is looking like they want to try to do as much as possible to capitalize on their marquee program, which is Ohio State. So I like the fact that Ohio State is going to be on that Thursday night. I don't want it to be a regular occurrence, mind you. I don't want, I'm still vehemently, I haven't changed my tune about any Big Ten team playing on Friday nights. I think that's a sacred night for high school football. But I think for Labor Day weekend, especially, on a Thursday night, I think that's great.
I don't know. You want to go head-to-head against the MAC on a Thursday night.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but it's like that. Those Thursdays. I mean, I might be wrong, but it's like I think, like when it comes to that opening Thursday, there's something special about it. I mean, I remember. I mean, obviously, it was kind of a that game never happened, of course. According to the NCAA, but I think it was back in 2010. Ohio State, they opened up their season against Marshall on a Thursday night, and I also seem to recall I mean, gosh almighty, this is making me feel old. Back at like the 1997 season started on a Thursday night against Wyoming. So I mean, it's rare, but yeah, I think kind of starting off the season on a Thursday night, not every team, but like a select few, and Ohio State doing it every so often, I think it's a great way to start off Labor Day weekend.
All right, so the Buckeyes will play on a Thursday night. They will face the Gophers on the road. Then 3 straight non-conference opponents at home. All the rest of the games are on Saturdays. September 11th against Oregon. That's the big one. So 9 days between games there. A little bit of time to fix some things that they kind of find in at the Minnesota game that might need to be beefed up a little. The Saturday, September 18th game is against Tulsa, and then Akron on the 25th. I'm sorry, Zips, in advance. I'm sorry for what's about to happen to you. Then Rutgers, trip to Rutgers on October 2nd. So the Buckeyes will play their first 2 league games on the road. Maryland at home on the 9th, then an off week on the 16th. At Indiana on the 23rd, so we'll get 3 out of 4 on the road. Then Penn State at home on the 30th. At Nebraska on the 6th of November. Purdue at home on the 13th. Michigan State at home on the 20th. And then at Michigan on the 27th. And the Big Ten Championship game is scheduled for December 4th. Chip, do you think Michigan should get to host this year after not taking care of business with regard to COVID-19 this year.
I do. I mean, as disappointed as I was that the game was canceled last year, I think just for the sake of, all right, let's just get back to our normal, schedule as much as possible. And I mean, it certainly was disappointing that Ohio State did not get to throttle Michigan, which they would have. We'll just have to savor it that much more, like you said, when November 27th comes around.
Yeah, getting to Prosper, Michigan. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like losing a home game in the game series, but it is what it is, and the Buckeyes will be at the Wolverines on the 27th for the game. And what really will be interesting to see, Chip, is are there going to be fans in the stands this fall?
I'm going to be optimistic that I maybe I'm naive. I think, without taking our podcast into a political bent, everything that you and I and hopefully our listeners are, when it comes to news of the vaccines, the fact that, as it relates to, for example, Johnson and Johnson is a vaccine that is supposedly just one shot, like the Pfizer, Moderna ones are two shots. My point being that by the time the fall comes around, that my hope and belief is that the vast majority of the population will be vaccinated and we will be able to have fans in the stands, if not maybe at the beginning of the season, definitely by the end of the season. So that's my optimistic hope.
Well, I hope you're right. Hopefully that can happen. I don't know. I don't know what the speed of the vaccinations, is up in Ohio. It's coming along a little bit slowly, I think, here in Florida. But and I think that it's kind of, I don't think it's very fast anywhere particularly, but I think it's happening, and that's good because we need to protect the population here. We got a lot of issues, and we need to. I think people are going stir crazy. Mental health is a problem right now. We got to get some semblance of normalcy. So for people to be able to go out safely would be a good thing, and that of course includes sports. So we will see how that goes. But hopefully you're right. Hopefully there'll be some fans in the stands, even if it's limited and socially distanced. Some fans is better than no fans.
Absolutely. I'm not holding out hope for the Ohio State spring game, which is tentatively scheduled for the middle of April. And I want to emphasize the word tentatively scheduled, because Ryan Day last week, when he met with the media, kind of outlined a spring schedule where, unlike previous years where Ohio State spaced out its spring football, to include the Ohio State spring break. Well, since Ohio State isn't having a spring break, it really doesn't give them that great of an advantage. So I think spring football for Ohio State is going to probably begin in March, and will, as of right now, I think it is tentatively scheduled for April 17th for the spring game. I am under no illusions whatsoever that fans will be in the stands. Maybe kind of what they did this year, where the coaches' families and the players' families will be allowed in. But I'd be surprised if fans would be allowed in the stands for the spring game. Like I said, let's hold out hope that, as you mentioned, September 11th, when Ohio State has their home opener against Oregon, let's hope that fans are allowed to be in the stands for that one.
Indeed. All right, well, we have a few more things to cover before we get out of here, and we'll get to those topics right after this. All right, Chip. So we've talked about Ohio State's schedule a little bit. We talked about the Buckeyes and the fact that their schedule is pretty good. They managed to separate Penn State and Michigan a little bit when those were back to back. this year, and of course it didn't have originally there was a Penn State Michigan back to back, and we've seen Michigan State Michigan back to back, and it's probably better to have it now while Michigan State's down a little bit, but overall a pretty good schedule. It gives Ohio State a chance to get a little bit of revenge on Purdue and all that kind of stuff. But were there other games in the Big Ten that stick out to you from this schedule revamp?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't so much of a revamp. The possibility of this game being, I guess you could say, like here in the continental United States, Illinois and Nebraska was actually like one of those week 0 games, August 28th. I mean, that's notable simply because, let's face it, Burt. The return of Burt to Big Ten football.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, you're talking, that's actually, that one of those week 0 games. That might be, for example, if they're not allowed to travel to Ireland, that might just be a game at Illinois. But, some of the other games, I mean, the fact that Ohio State, since they're playing that September 2nd game, a game that caught my eye for that Labor Day weekend, September 4th, Penn State at Wisconsin, so you're talking, I mean, that's kind of a great way, another great game to start off the Big Ten slate. And then later in September, before Ohio State plays Rutgers and keep in mind that, Rutgers going to Michigan, that one went into overtime this past year. Let's just kind of see, if Rutgers, what kind of a team Greg Schiano has in year 2. And then, as it relates to Ohio State, since they're off October 16th, Michigan State is playing Indiana. And I only bring that up simply because the very next week, Ohio State, they're at Indiana. So this is, I kind of look at it as like, hey, here's a great opportunity to see, how Indiana, how they look. Obviously Ohio State, they want to take advantage of, hopefully being healthy, but, to kind of see what kind of team Indiana has, before the Buckeyes go on the road. Michigan's schedule, when I looked at it, I mean, that last part of the Wolverine schedule, and I certainly do not have a lot of sympathy for them. They have to go on the road to Michigan State, team that beat them in 2020. Then when they come home, they play Indiana on November 6th. They go on the road at Penn State November 13th. And then, when it comes to, playing basically, like they're going to be playing Maryland the week before they play Ohio State. I just see, Michigan's schedule. This is going to be very interesting to see how the Wolverines, what kind of shape they're in. I know that you wanted that game at home, and I understand it, but I think the Wolverines truly might be welcoming in Ohio State with several losses on their record before the Buckeyes even take the field in Ann Arbor.
Who's going to be at the helm for the Wolverines at quarterback? Is it going to be Tate Martell?
It could be. You never know. You never know. That transfer portal, you never know.
All right. Yeah. One thing that I do want to mention before we move on from this topic is Minnesota on the road, Purdue at home, at Nebraska. Those are the crossover games. No Illibert trophy.
Like I said, we've got to hold out hope that Burt can make it to 2024. That's, I think, in a previous I may be mistaken. I haven't really scrutinized it too much, but I want to say the next time Ohio State is scheduled to play Illinois is 2024. So got to hold out hope.
Should protect those trophy games in the crossovers. That's all I'm saying.
I understand.
All right, so that's the schedule. It is what it is. We'll see how it goes, and Ohio State will of course be probably favored in every game this year. So we'll see if the 2021 Buckeyes with a new starter quarterback, a whole bunch of new linebackers. We'll see how they do in 2021. Probably pretty good if history is any indication. Let us move on to our next topic, Chip, and that is the fact that if you want to be the NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year, you should probably go to Ohio State because Chase Young has become the fourth player in the last 5 seasons to win that honor as a former Buckeye. It was Joey Bosa, Marshawn Lattimore, and Nick Bosa and Chase Young. 4 of the last 5 years, a Buckeye has won Defensive Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, and I think it also, it speaks volumes. I know Marshawn Lattimore is a defensive back, but the fact that you rattled off the Bosa brothers, the fact that they were all coached by Larry Johnson. So I think if you're a defensive lineman, the opportunity to come and play for such a legendary coach, I think it speaks volumes about your future earning potential at the next level. So congratulations to Chase Young. Well deserved, and I think it speaks volumes about the caliber of coaching and development that takes place at Ohio State.
Yeah, I'm sure those guys get pretty hefty bonuses in their contracts for that winning that award. So it's never a bad thing to earn a little bit more coin.
No, never at all.
All right, staying on the defensive side of the football, Chip, kind of an interesting little tidbit that I was very interested to hear is that walk-on defensive tackle Zaid Hamdan has entered the transfer portal. And this is a thing that I didn't know was a thing. I just assumed, I don't know why, I just assumed that a walk-on just simply walked off and then just walked on somewhere else. I didn't know that they had to go through a transfer portal because you're a walk-on. You're essentially just a student like anybody else. So Hamdan had played in 5 games since the 2019 season started. And I thought that, like in garbage time, he stood out a little bit. So, here's a guy who probably could go somewhere else and get some playing time and, probably going to end up a good move for his career.
Yeah, I wish him nothing but the best. I think when it comes to the transfer portal, I agree with you. I kind of fall in the same category as you, but I really believe that he probably put his name out there just to see what kind of interest he might garner from other programs. But I wish him nothing but the best. I just know that, it's from what I've read online has nothing to do with Ohio State. But just in general across the country, I think the transfer portal is going to be a very, very active element of this offseason with everything that transpired during, we were talking about coronavirus earlier and things like that. I think the transfer portal is going to be very active, not just, for Ohio State players potentially, but all players across the country.
Yeah, and I think that it's an interesting situation because you got a whole class of players that didn't really make official visits, or at least not all of them. So they get on campus, maybe things aren't quite as good as they thought, or quite the way they thought they would be. So maybe they said, well, there's these other schools I was thinking about, and maybe I'm not really that happy here. So you go into the transfer portal, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Ohio State bring in some transfers. We mentioned linebacker could be a spot where they might target, and as you're trying to replace a lot of starters, and of course we talked about the secondary issues. If there's a really good corner or safety out there that is interested in transferring, and Ohio State says, hey, maybe this is someone we should bring in, that's another possibility. So I think that that's something to watch. And you know how Ryan Day likes to have 4 quarterbacks. So maybe somebody who's wants to come to Ohio State and learn here, and play for Ryan Day, and maybe with the knowledge that they're probably not going to get on the field, but sort of a Gunnar Hoke kind of transfer that could happen as well.
I agree. I just think roster management is going to be it's going to be interesting to keep an eye on, because I genuinely don't know. The reason why I'm kind of hemming and hawing on this one is the whole 85 player scholarship limit. How much is the NCAA going to enforce that? How much latitude do programs have? Because Ryan Day kind of alluded to the fact that they were pretty close to the limit already. I know that they were holding out a scholarship for JTT. He has not yet signed. And he's the kind of impact player that basically every program, including Alabama, would love to add. He's one of those guys that Ohio State would welcome very quickly with tremendous excitement. But my point being is, like, when it comes to the whole transfer portal, like you said, like the secondary, if there's an impact player, or like you said, maybe an additional quarterback to kind of help, with the transition, I think it's going to bear watching for sure.
And as you know, you'll have spring ball. Hopefully you have spring ball, and when guys sort of figure out, oh, I'm still not at the top of the pecking order in my position group, and I'm a junior. Those are the guys that are ripe for the transfer portal out. So, it'll be interesting to watch that management. It's really interesting since the transfer portal became a big thing that, what coaches have to deal with now is they have to deal with that. They have to deal with the early signing period now and everything. So there's been a lot of changes, just over the last several years that have affected college football, and being able to manage that is an important part of being a head coach these days. And so, sometimes you see some of these older coaches that have been successful. Some of them can adapt to it. Some of them can't. And it'll be interesting to watch how the transfer portal unfolds. I believe now the Athletic has added an entire column just devoted to the transfer portal.
Okay, I was not aware of that. I know that as it relates to Ohio State and Ryan Day, I mean, I want to give credit to Coach Day, when it comes to managing the transfer portal. Let's face it, when it came to, obviously Justin Fields is, Ohio State were the lucky beneficiaries of that. We had Trey Sermon. Unfortunately, it didn't end the way that we all wanted to, but Trey Sermon going into the national championship game. You also had Jonah Jackson, on the offensive line. I mean, like, Ohio State has really done a good job as it related to like the transfer portal. So
Justin Fields, little guy named Justin Fields.
Oh yeah, like I said, Justin Fields. Yeah, Justin Fields is like probably the most notable. So far Ohio State has not. I mean, like, let's face it, like they lost, some players, that left the program, like you said, kind of, with spring football, that's usually kind of your barometer as to where you stand on the depth chart. And kind of give you an idea as to what the coaches believe your role is going to be for the upcoming season. So it wouldn't be surprising at the end of April, let's say, that Ohio State might have some players deciding to make that move. But as I said, I think the transfer portal, it's gonna be something to certainly keep an eye on as it relates to social media, not just for Ohio State, but all programs, because I think there are a lot of players across the country who are kind of, let's face it, the whole playing time situation, the coronavirus. There are a lot of X factors involved as to why players may believe that they may be better suited elsewhere. And I don't think any program, especially Ohio State, is invulnerable to changes as it relates to the transfer portal.
Indeed. So you've got Mookie Cooper and Zaid Hamdan already transfer portaling out. Apparently, you cannot just walk off. You have to transfer and go somewhere else. And good luck to those guys. And as I said, they'll probably be an addition or two to Ohio State, and there'll probably be another departure or two. So that'll be another thing to keep an eye on as we move through spring ball and after the spring. I think it'll become probably pretty obvious to some guys midway through the spring that they need to probably put their name in that portal. And certainly by the end of spring, there'll be probably a couple of names going in there. So, but that'll be happening everywhere. And it's kind of like college free agency in a way. So we'll see how that all shakes out this off season. Chip, anything else you want to touch on before we get on out of here?
No, I think obviously there's always news coming. As it relates to Ohio State football, I think you would agree that there really isn't a true off season. I mean, there's always something happening. I mean, like we were talking about the rumors of Al Washington. As we were recording this, like you said, like maybe that decision by the time this is published, we'll have more information. But winter workouts are just beginning. Spring football is right around the corner. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to when we get together, talking about the latest and greatest as it relates to Ohio State football with you.
All right. Well, if you haven't done so already, folks, get on over to BuckeyeScoop.com and sign up and become one of our insiders. There's always stuff, even in the off season, that's these little nuggets that drop that you're going to want to know before everybody else knows, and that's the place to do it. Be sure to check out all of the shows on the Buckeye Scoop Radio Network, the Buckeye Weekly, the Morning Scoop, the Buckeye Sloopcast, Banks and the Give, all of those and more. And there's plenty to choose from, and it's great. It's great to have such a variety of podcasts at your fingertips, and they all do bang up jobs, and we even got the Buckeye Weekly to talk a little bit about basketball this week, which is cool. Chip, where can people find you on the internet?
I can be found on Twitter at Chip Minnich. Last name is spelled Minnich. I'm also a contributor to Athlon Sports. I just recently had an article published about 3 reasons for optimism about Ohio State heading into 2021. So look for that on athlonsports.com.
All right, and you can find me on Twitter at Mike36Fan. If you want to ask Chip or myself a question, just hit us up on Twitter at the Twitter accounts we just gave you. If you've already forgot, you can hit the back 15 seconds button or whatever and go write those down. Any questions you want us to answer on our next show, just go ahead and ask on Twitter, and we'll be happy to do that. And we appreciate you listening. Thanks for listening, and everybody stay safe out there. We'll see you in a couple weeks as we have gone to our off-season schedule of every 2 weeks, and I look forward to doing these off-season shows with you, Chip, because we haven't done this in the past. We've kind of gathered around the spring game, and then we were off until our season previews in the fall. But this time, I think we're going to have plenty to talk about all off-season long.
I agree. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, that's it. We will see you guys next week. Nothing left to say but what we always say at the end, which is go Bucks.
Go Bucks.